one thing you said, which is interesting, you said that, Cassie had been working on an album for 10 years and he used this as a pacifier. Diddy used this as a pacifier, for her freak-offs. Now, I'll say this. I know someone who worked at Bad Boy during the whole time that Cassie was there. And he told me point blank, and this is not someone who's part of a lawsuit. He's not pro-Diddy, against Diddy. This is just a friend of mine, who I have a long relationship with. And he said that when Cassie was on the label, when she had a song that looked like it might react, she was treated with the same fervor that any other artist on the label was treated. They would send the song to radio. They would put her on promo tours. The songs, at the end of the day, just never picked up outside of the first song, Me and You.
I had a producer talking about they made 50 songs in 2010. She had 3 singles in 2012.
She had a bunch of singles.
No more singles until 2017, but there was never a title and never a release date. This was never meant to come out.
If you don't have follow-up songs that don't react, you're not going to get an album. I think in this particular sense, I know that everyone wants to paint Cassie as the victim and everything. I think in this particular case,
this is not her first album. You got to make the album. You got to let me.
But if the songs, listen, Me and You was the single that was there before Puffy even signed her, right?
Okay.
The song came out, it went viral on its own, just her and Ryan Leslie grinding independently. Puffy signed her, and then when it was time for a second single, none of the songs ever reacted. Could we just say that maybe Cassie is not a talented musical artist and it is what it is? I mean, not everyone that gets into the musical industry does not become successful. There's very few stars out there. And a lot of people, if they get a hit song, most of the time, they never followed up with anything. That's just how life works. Not everyone's Mary J. Blige.
I'm not
Not everyone is Whitney Houston.
There's a world full of people who are not them. No one's suggesting that. We know as part of his entire quid pro quo scheme that Cassie was given a project to work on, but it was never really meant to come out.
You would say that from your point of view, but I'm talking about from someone who was actually there at Bad Boy, and they legitimately tried to push these singles and radio just wasn't feeling it. The fans weren't feeling it. Not everyone is a music star. Some people just luck up on a song and they could tour off it for the rest of the world, for the rest of their life, and they're happy to do that. Not everyone's going to have a body of work that people react to over and over again. Can you honestly say that, wow, Cassie's just such a talented singer? Like, she's the next Christina Aguilera. She's the next Whitney Houston. Or did she just have a cool little jingle that reacted, mostly thanks to Ryan Leslie, who was in a serious relationship with her at the time, and he's a talented guy in his own right. They came up with something that worked. They weren't able to recreate that, and she was given a lot of chances. She had a lot of features. She worked with a lot of different people, but none of the songs ever reacted.
I know that she worked on an album for 10 years. That is an extraordinary amount of studio time.
Yeah.
So you're spending upwards of $10 million?
I don't know about $10 million.
If you record for 10 years,
Diddy owned his own studio, Daddy's house. He was probably there most of the time. That's his own studio.
But there's engineers there.
How
there's
much
producers. There's
paid?
songwriters. There's people.
$50,000 a year. Yeah.
But there's producers and songwriters.
Right.
She had features from real artists, so they had to pay them.
Let me put it like this:
real producers.
From my point
of
view, if that was not Diddy's girlfriend, she would have gotten dropped from the label probably after the first year. I think she was given more opportunity because of their relationship.
Yes, but that looks at it as a legitimate project. It's not a legitimate project. Yes, she stays on the label because she's his girlfriend, because he wants her to stick around and do the nighttime shit.
And she probably wants to do it too, and she's given an opportunity because she is the girlfriend.
I would never consider... I think
it goes both ways, man.
I would never talk about her motivations. And I know I would never talk about her feelings or motivations. I would never even think about that. I know that label spent a lot of time and a lot of money with a lot of employees giving her chances. There's no way
that never
all these
materialized.
people just couldn't come up with anything for her. Or
you're talking about music. That's not an accurate statement.
No,
that's not an accurate statement. You know music. You're a purist. You understand how this shit works, especially on the singing side. A rapper is easier to get a hit
you're
sometimes.
acting like this is a meritocracy, right? Bad singers make it sometimes. Good singers don't make it sometimes. This is not like, well, if you make quality records, there's times when we as an audience need to hear a record over and over before we become acculturated to it, right? So if the gatekeepers, radio, MTV, are like pushing a record, that can almost make it popular.
Right, but they usually have to start with a strong record.
But we also have a situation where this sexual quid pro quo is happening with multiple people, not just her. If she was the only one...
What other artists on the label were sleeping with Diddy in exchange for studio time?
I think that the arrangement is more complicated than that. It's not quite that simple.
Diddy was only doing this with Cassie. And to further prove my point.
You seriously think that Diddy was only doing this with Cassie? And like...
At the label, yes.
But what is? But
was he doing it with Total? Was he doing it with Faith Evans? She wasn't on the label, but she was affiliated. I mean, like,
we have.
There really were not a lot of female acts on the label. Period. Outside of Cassie,
it's for one, it's bizarre to me that you still think of him as just doing this to women. That's bizarre because we are way past that.
There has been a lot of gay rumors and so forth. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm not sure. There's a story,
there's tons of
that we're not going to talk about, but
there's tons of complaints on the record from men. Lots of them.
Civil suits. I haven't heard of any criminal complaints of men against Diddy. Haven't heard that yet. I've never heard of a man saying
a civil suit is not lesser. We have
it is lesser.
Lots of people.
It is lesser. There's a much lower tolerance to actually win a civil lawsuit than a criminal lawsuit. A criminal lawsuit is beyond a shadow of a doubt, 90%, 95%.
Right.
Civil lawsuit is more probable than not, 51%.
But if something happened one time, then you could argue that this is an aberration. If something happens over and over and over and over, it's clearly not an aberration. We have seen many, many times that this person operating a quid pro quo, right? Not just with Cassie, with many, many, many other people, right? We see this
sexually.
Yeah, we see this discussed in complaint after complaint after complaint. That is one of the big consistencies that we see over and over.
Listen, I'm not trying to defend Diddy, but I also have to be a voice of reason sometimes, and I'm not a huge fan of pylons. I want to separate the actual truth from what everyone else is saying with civil lawsuits. Anyone can file a civil lawsuit. I could say that you touched me inappropriately before the interview started, and I could file a lawsuit, and we could go through the whole process, and you can be found not guilty. You see what I'm saying? If I have a lawyer that wants to take it on contingency, anyone can file. But, at the end of the day, for example, going back to Cassie, if Cassie was a very talented artist, why was there no other labels that wanted to pick her up after she left Bad Boy? There was no bidding war over Cassie. I'm saying she could have potentially taken all those records.
When she left Bad Boy in, 2018 or 2020?
Right.
When she hadn't made an album for Bad Boy?
Right.
You don't see the issue there. That you were at Bad Boy for 10 years and you never released an album because you were never supposed to, but you never released an album.
But if
you want a different label?
If you're talented, then
when I was 20 and young,
she's still young. What is she, 30 now? That's not that old.
As far as the music business?
That's not that old for the music business.
As far as the music business?
As long as you still have your looks and you take care of yourself.
One
at
artist
30, you could still be a bona fide star.
One artist explained to me that having a record deal is like a bank loan.
Yeah.
And they have loaned you a certain amount of money. Now, and you pay it back through your record sales. Now, if you should, for some reason, go through your record deal and not release an album, then you have a problem because you have negative credit.
Right.
So every other label is like, why didn't you release an album? And if you were there 2 years, maybe we could figure out a story. You were there 10 years and you didn't release an album, and now you're 30, and I'm looking at the 20. You could say it's not that old. I'm looking at the 20-year-olds who just arrived in town, who are hot and young and fresh. They're in the middle. They're
but
in
they
the
don't
club
already
scene.
have. They don't already have a hit song like Cassie had.
From 2006.
And already
2006
have
doesn't help you in 2024.
And some level of name recognition and face recognition based on all the time she was on the red carpet and everything else like that. That's all I'm saying.
Vlad,
if there really was
career has been ruined and spoiled
I disagree.
by Diddy.
I disagree.
And he wasted her time
I disagree.
in the prime of her life with this ridiculous scheme that she didn't really want to do. It was like, the album is fake just to get you to do this other shit, just to be my girlfriend and to do this other shit.
I disagree. I think that, like I said, if she was any girl off the street, she gets signed off a song. Look at G Dep. Perfect example. G Dep had a certain amount of street buzz. He has some records that were reacting in New York, like DJ Premier was working with him. He gets signed to Bad Boy. He has Get This Money, right? He has a hit song. He doesn't follow it up with anything. Eventually he gets let go from the label. And then, he falls into drugs and eventually admits to killing a man from years ago and goes to prison. But this happens all the time. A label signs someone, they have a spark of something, they can't follow it up with anything. Black Rob had a huge song, couldn't follow it up with anything. Ultimately, these people get dropped from the label, they go on.
None of these people had 10 years of making...
And Cassie got more chances than every other artist on the label because of the relationship with Diddy. He kept putting money into studios.
It's hysterical that you still think
you can look at it differently.
It's hysterical that you think this is a real album. It's a real artist deal.
Listen, my man told me she had a song, and she had like that song, "Long Way to Go." That did a little something. It didn't get big, but it did a little something, and they really promoted it. They really pushed it.
It's funny.
But you can't take a song that's mediocre and turn it into a mega smash, no matter how much promo you put into it.
Are you kidding me? You can't take a mediocre song and turn it into... There's mediocre songs that become mega smashes all the time. What are you talking about? You think the music industry is a meritocracy?
The people
who win are great singers and they're great songs and like the people.
And they usually get one chance, like the Gangnam Style guy. You ever heard from him again? Party Like a Rock Star. You ever hear from them again? Like lots of people. Vanilla Ice had a monster song. He never really followed it up with anything. But, he still had a monster song and built his fortune around it. Shit happens, but you can't. Why did all these other people who have monster songs never have a follow-up when they were on fire at the time? If people don't take to it, people don't take to it. You can't cram mediocre music down people's throats and expect them to just take to it every time. Every so often it does happen, but in general, the label says, listen, we've done what we could do. But she was given a lot of chances. She got to work with Kid Cudi. She got to work with this producer. You know how the Kid Cudi shit worked out.
She got to work with Kid Cudi.
Yeah, and then they started a relationship.
You're way in left field on this.
And then, his car blew up.
They
started dating, and his car got blown up.